The Pasuk Yutes, Perek Yud Gimel, B'Shalach, V'yikach Moshe es atzmos Yosef imo. Moshe took the remains of Yosef with him, or the bones, Ki hashbiya hishbiyas b'nei Yisrael lemor, because he had adjured the Jewish people saying, Pokot Yivkot, Elokim Eschem. Pokot Yivkot was the code word that when the true Goel will come, when the redemption will come, meaning God had sent that Redeemer, Va'alisem es atzmosai mizeh etchem. You will bring my remains from here with this together with you. Itchem. So Rashi over here explains, Va'alisem es atzmo mizeh itchem. What's the itchem? Le'echof ishbiyakein. He had adjured his brothers, Lobadu shaf atzmos kalashvotim helu imon shnema itchem. Not only were the remains of Yosef taken out of Egypt, but the remains of all the brothers, each one of their tribes had taken the remains of their ancestor, their antecedent, the founder of that tribe. So the tribe of Ruvain had taken the remains of Ruvain, Shimon, Levi. But Yosef had adjured the Jewish people that they should take his remains. So Moshe, being the representative of the whole Jewish people, he took Yosef's remains out. It's the equivalent of the whole Jewish people taking out Yosef's remains. There's a question I asked. If every one of the tribes had taken out the remains of their own ancestor, I mean, Yosef had two children, Ephraim and Asher. So why did he adjure the rest of them that they must take out his remains? They're responsible to take out his remains. And now Moshe, being the leader of all the tribes, he's the equivalent of all the tribes take out Yosef. Why? So we had mentioned then that initially, when Yaakov had sent Yosef to seek out the welfare of his brothers and the flocks to see how they were doing in Shechem, so it says that Yosef was wandering in the field and he meets a man. He meets a person who's called Ish. And Rashi over there cites the Midrash. Who's Ish? Ish ze Gabriel the archangel, in human form. And he says, who are you looking for? He says, I'm looking for my brothers. So Gabriel says to him, Nosu mizeh. Your brothers, they traveled mizeh. What is the word mizeh? They traveled from this. The brothers, the sons of Yaakov, were 12. The numerical value of Zeh is 12, meaning the brothers broke the unity. They have no interest in having anything to do with you. That's basically what he said. Yosef didn't understand what he said to him, and didn't understand that where he was going, he was putting his life in jeopardy. And as soon as they see him, they attack him, and the original intent was to kill him, because they had no interest in that he should be part of their group. So Nosu Mizeh, they traveled from this. They broke the Zeh. When Yosef adjures his brothers before he passes away, he said to them, Halisa es atzmose mizeh etchem. You will take out my remains, mizeh, meaning the only way I will forgive you is only if you restore the Zeh. The Zeh, the 12, has to be restored. Now Moshe is fulfilling that promise that they will restore the Zeh. Therefore, it's repeating, Moshe had taken out the remains of Yosef because he had adjured them that when Elokim will remember you and take you out at time of redemption, you will take up remains mizeh to restore the Zeh, the 12. So it wasn't enough that his own children should take him out. because over here, all of them had to be involved in removing the remains from Yosef. Because here, the Zeh had to be restored. And the only way the Zeh could be restored is that every one of the tribes had to participate in the removal of his remains from Egypt. There, Moshe being the Shaliach, the leader, representing all the Jews, him taking out Yosef's remains is the equivalent of all the tribes participating and fulfilling this promise. That's how we explained it. So over here, the Gemara tells us, cites a verse in Mishlei, where Shlomo Melech says, Leiv chacham yikach mitzvos. The one who has the wise heart takes the mitzvos. Who's Leiv chacham? Leiv chacham ze Moshe Rabbeinu. Ze Moshe. Why? Because what were all the other Jews doing at this moment? They were borrowing the gold, silver vessels, which was a mitzvah. What was Moshe doing? Moshe was looking for the remains of Yosef. First, where were the remains of Yosef? Where were they? The Egyptians knew about this oath that the Jews had taken, and this was a prerequisite for the Jews to leave Egypt. Unless they took the remains of Yosef with them, they couldn't leave Egypt. So they took Yosef's remains and they put it into a cement casket, and they sunk it to the bottom of the Nile. And they figured when it's going to be time to leave, hundreds of years into the future, they're not going to be able to retrieve the remains of Yosef. So what happened? Moshe knew he had to locate the remains of Yosef. He had no idea where they were. This is years later. Moshe didn't know what the Egyptians had done with the remains of Yosef. Where did they hide them? So Serach Bas Osher, who had lived, received the bracha from her grandfather. She's the one who had informed her grandfather about Yosef was alive. She had sung a song, not that it should not be too much of a shock. And he referred to her as his old aunt. And he went and he said to her, Auntie, where can I find the remains of Yosef? She shared with him that they had sunk it into the Nile. Now the question is, how do you bring it up? They put it into a casket that's may weigh tons, and with all the silt over the years on the bottom of the Nile, how do you raise it? So the Chazal tell us, we know that Yosef is compared to the shore. So he took a piece of parchment and he wrote on a piece of parchment, Alei shore. Shore, rise, ascend. And he took it, he put it into the Nile, and he says to Yosef, Yosef, I'm here to fulfill the promise that before we leave, we're coming to take your remains. If you come now, fine. If not, we've done ours, we fulfilled our promise. As he said that, all of a sudden, this casket, weighing tons, rises to the surface, and Moshe takes it out, takes out the remains of Yosef, and this is Moshe Rabbeinu taking the remains of Yosef out of Egypt. And this was the fulfillment of the promise that the brothers, the tribes had made to Yosef, that when they leave, they will all participate in the removal of Yosef's remains from Egypt. I'm just telling this Chazal. This is the Medrash. So the Gemara says, based on the Pasuk in Mishlei, Chacham Levi Kach Mitzvos. The wise heart takes the mitzvahs, retrieves the mitzvah. Meaning Moshe Rabbeinu was called Chacham Lev. What's the good? As we spoke, each Jew had taken out. We find that the only species, which is a non-kosher species, which you have to do the redemption of the firstborn, is the donkey. The donkey. Any other non-kosher species has no relevance to that the firstborn has any degree of kedusha. A donkey, firstborn, male is born, it has to be redeemed. How is it redeemed? That the owner of the donkey has to give a sheep to the Kohen. And that's the redemption. If not, the Torah says, we have this in last week's reading, you break the neck of the donkey. Either you redeem it, or you cannot benefit from it. Now, what a donkey? Donkey's a non-kosher species. So the Midrash answers because the donkey had participated in the promise that the Jews, when they leave Egypt, they're going to go out with great wealth. Every Jew had 10 pack animals, donkeys, laden with gold and silver. Therefore, since they participated in the Kiddush Hashem, that the promise of Hashem was fulfilled, therefore the donkey took on that special value. That was the donkey. But what's the good of all the gold and silver? And God fulfilling, but there's a prerequisite. You can't leave Egypt unless you have the remains of Yosef. So, but nobody thought about that. The only one who thought about that was Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu focused on this. He says, it's irrelevant, the gold, silver. What I have to do, I have to locate the remains of Yosef. Otherwise, we're not leaving. Therefore, Mishlei, Shlomo Melech depicts Moshe Rabbeinu as the Chacham Lev Yikach Mitzvos. He's the one with the wise heart. He took mitzvahs. He's the one who takes the mitzvahs. He has that level of clarity because he has the wisdom of the heart. So I always say, we say, Ezel Chocham. It doesn't say Hamevin as I know about. Who is the wise man? The one who understands the ramifications of one's actions or of a situation. Ezel Chocham Haro as I know about. He sees, seeing is reality. As we say, seeing is believing. Meaning, it's not, he just understands the ramifications of not taking Yosef out, but he understands, he sees with absolute clarity that if Yosef is not retrieved and not found, we go nowhere. The only one who had that level of clarity, which was with an absolute level, was Moshe Rabbeinu. I'll give you an example. It's say you have millions of Jews leaving Egypt. There were 600,000 men above the age of 20, plus women and children. Is it possible to say, and they all knew that they could only leave Egypt if they take the remains of Yosef with them. Is it possible that one of all these millions of people shouldn't think about taking the remains of Yosef out of Egypt? It's an impossibility. How's it possible? And not one of them should think about it. Moshe Rabbeinu, being the Chacham Lev, understood. You may think it's impossible, but reality, Chacham Lev Yikach Mitzvahs, but it's not beyond impossibility. You never know, because everybody relies on everyone else. And at the end of the day, nobody will take him out. And if Chas Shalom, nobody takes out Yosef, we don't leave Egypt. Moshe having that level of clarity, therefore he's depicted as Chacham Lev, he took the Atzmos Yosef. He's the one who went and sought out the location, and he did left no stone unturned until he was able to raise the remains of Yosef. And only because of that, we were able to leave Egypt. And therefore the Torah goes and makes a point of this. Who took out the remains of Yosef? Moshe Rabbeinu. Because he understood, due to the oath that they had taken, it would be impossible to leave unless the remains of Yosef accompanied them out of Egypt.